What's up, guys? I spent my entire childhood pretending I was this guy in my backyard. Today, we have the legend, Chuck Long. What's up, Chuck?
What's up, Grubb?
Thanks for coming out, man.
Great to be here.
This is really cool. This means a lot to me. My dad was in here a little bit ago and we were talking. And so I'm going to take my first opportunity to say thank you. Growing up, we had the coolest big screen TV. It was like a 3-foot, 4-foot deep, 1,000-pound, like Mitsubishi big screen TV. And it was the coolest one on the block. And it was either my parents were going to go to the Rose Bowl or they were going to get a big screen TV. And so because of you, we had a big screen TV, like the coolest one on the block forever, of which my dad had that thing up until like 5 years ago.
That's awesome.
It was his Rose Bowl TV. So it was very cherished. So my first opportunity is thanks for the big screen TV.
That's a good story. I like that story.
Yeah. So you probably have a lot of that. Like we were talking, you know, so much of my awareness of Chuck Long and Hayden Fry and the Iowa Hawkeyes came from my dad and his buddies sitting around drinking beers, telling stories. I would have been about 4 in the 1986, Rose Bowl, but I know every game in that 85 season. I knew about the bootleg. I knew about the Michigan game and being #1 in the country and all that. And so it was just a lot of fun. Like last night as I was looking through YouTube, that was the first time that I actually saw that. So it's got to be fun for you to, over time, really get multi-generationally to be able to share that time of your life, right? It
has been. As the older you get, the better the stats become too. There's a few more touchdown passes. People will come out of the woodwork and say, "Hey, I remember when you did that in this game," and I'm thinking, "God, I don't remember that." But if you say so, but it's been fun. And I just came out with a book not too long ago, about going on 3 years ago now, and it's the first book I've ever been a part of, and I had I have a great author, Aaron Putsey, and he wrote it for me, and I gave him all the information. And that's really, and we've gone on this book signing tour across the state, and that's been a lot of fun, reconnecting with people or connecting with old friends again and telling those old stories, because that's what they want to hear. It's funny you mentioned about old stories. I was at I actually did a speech yesterday, and it was a motivational leadership type speech, and it was very quick, and I kept everything current in my speech, right? So I kept the beginning, the intro. I kept my Power Six, I call it, the 6 P's of success. And I went right into that, right? Well, then I opened it up for questions at the end, and this guy raises his hand and says, "Hey, let's talk about #1 versus #2 in 1985. And it was funny. Everybody kind of laughed because I was thinking, they didn't want to hear my motivational speech. They just want me to tell stories the whole time. But that's the beauty of being part of that beginning of the Hayden Fry football era, if you will. We were part of the building blocks of something very special. And people now, especially my age or older or a little bit younger, want to go back to those times and talk about it again.
Well, I was getting ready this morning, and I told my wife, I said, "Hey, I'm having Chuck Long on the podcast today." She's like, "Cool. What time are you going to be home tonight?" I'm like, "Honey, Chuck Long, like Iowa quarterback?" She's like, "Yeah." She literally looks at me and she says, "Honey, if he's not on the Kardashians or Real Housewives, I don't know who he is." So she was very unimpressed.
Right.
But I do think there is that, right? Many people have this deep connection with Chuck Long and the Hawkeyes in the Hayden Fry era. But there is a generation of folks that either know the name but don't know why they know the name. So do give some of our listeners that are like, "Oh, Chuck Long, cool." Give a little bit of a background of who is Chuck Long.
Well, I'll give you the background, but usually when young people like your wife come up to me and say, "Well, who are you, by the way?" I say, "Well, go ask your dad or granddad. They'll tell you." But anyway, I'll let you know. I was actually born in Norman, Oklahoma. I grew up in an Oklahoma Sooner family. We were Boomer Sooners growing up. We watched that Oklahoma-Nebraska game, that big rivalry every year over Thanksgiving. We just were gigantic Sooner fans. And then we moved up to Illinois when I was 3. Grew up in a town called Wheaton, Illinois, western suburb of Chicago, about 30 miles. Great sports town, great football town. There's 10 state championships between 2 high schools. I think it's number 1 for public schools or town in the state of Illinois for state titles. We won it all. I grew up a 3-sport athlete. I was football, basketball, baseball. It's hard for kids to do that today. I wish they would get back to that because I enjoyed every sport. And I was just one of those kids that never thought about tomorrow. Let's just play hard today, have some fun, and see what happens. But in 1979 we were fortunate enough to win the state championship in football. I was a junior quarterback. We were on a running football team. We ran the ball every play. We threw the ball 4 to 5 times a game, and that was it. We had a great ex-Marine as a head coach, and he believed in his system, and we won. I mean, we won a lot of games, played great defense. I threw for -3 yards in the state championship game in 1979, and we won the football game. It was 40 years ago this fall. In fact, we had a big reunion at our homecoming game in Wheaton this fall. 40 years ago, that's when we won the title. As time has flown by.
Is that just a screen pass for negative
yards?
Yeah,
it was a little screen pass. I was 1 for 4 in the game. And I threw a little screen pass out to the side, and it went for -3. I think my coach said, "All right, no more throwing the ball." But I ended up winning the game, and we upset a team called LaSalle Peru, who were perennial state champs. But we had a lot of fun. That kind of kicked off the state championship run for both schools, and became a very powerful powerhouse town for football. I was not recruited really. Very heavily. I didn't get any phone calls or any letters or anything. And I'm finished up my senior year of football, and I just started basketball practice. And I'll never forget the phone call that changed my life forever. And everybody has that phone call or that moment where it just changes your life forever. And I come home I'll never forget, it was a Monday night, just started basketball. It was a snowy night in mid-December. And I get home, and I'm all sweaty, and I'm about ready to eat dinner with my folks, and I get this phone call from the great Bill Snyder. At the time was the offensive coordinator, quarterbacks coach at Iowa. I was very blessed to have 2 collegiate football Hall of Fame coaches coach me, and Hayden Fry and Bill Snyder. Not too many guys can say that. So anyway, he calls me up, and I didn't know who it was, and he's very monotone. And he said, "Is Chuck there?" "Yes, this is Chuck. This is Coach Bill Snyder, University of Iowa football. We'd like to bring you in this weekend for an official visit." "Come on, Tom, is this you?" I thought it was my buddy Tom. "Nope, this is not Tom. This is Coach Bill Snyder, University of Iowa football." Didn't even miss a beat. Anyway, he said, "We'd like to bring you in." So I get off the phone. My father said, "Well, who is that?" I said, "Well, it's this Iowa coach. They want to fly me in this weekend." My dad said, "Well, are they going to pay for it, son?" I said, I think so, Dad." Well, anyway, he drops me off at O'Hare Airport. I fly into Cedar Rapids. It's like it was yesterday. I get picked up by John Streif, the longtime trainer there, fabulous guy. We go to the IRP, the Iowa River Power Company, if you've ever been there. I saw the biggest prime rib I ever seen in my life. I wanted to be a Hawkeye on the spot, Anyway, back then, recruiting was so different. I'm there the whole weekend, and they take you on all kinds of tours, academic tours, athletic tours, and the whole time, Adam, I'm sitting there going, what am I doing here? Do they have the right guy? Do they watch the right film? Do you guys know I've only thrown the ball like 4 times a game? And so the weekend went through, and then Sunday's the magical day. Sunday, Hayden brings you into his office, sits you on that big leather couch, and he tells you whether he's going to offer you a scholarship or not. So he sits me down. I'm thinking, okay, what's he going to say to me? There's no way he's going to offer me a scholarship. He sits me down and goes, "Charlie," he called me Charlie. He says, "Charlie, we're going to turn this thing around, not only in time, but we're going to do it this year." Now, this is 1980. This is the 1980, 81, going into 81.
In dark times at Iowa football.
Oh, yeah. We're coming off 20 losing years in a row.
Yeah.
And he says it in his way, and it's a magical way. "We're going to turn this around. We want you to be a part of it. We're going to offer you a full ride scholarship." He went over it. It was all a blur to me. I didn't know what he's talking about. "Go home and talk it over your folks." I said, "Coach, I want to be a Hawkeye right now." He goes, "Well, you just go home and talk with your folks, and then we'll talk." So I fly home. My dad picks me up. "How'd it go, son?" Dad, I think they've offered me a scholarship. He goes, really? What does that include? Oh, I think room, board, books, tuition, the whole thing. Have they seen you play, son? And I go, Dad, I know it's really weird. He goes, oh, I want to get Coach Fry on the phone tonight. We'll confirm this. And
really?
sure enough, they talked that night, and he got off the phone, and he looked at me. He said, son, I'm proud of you.
Wow.
Yeah, they're going to offer you a scholarship. The issue back then, and I was really in a good era of timing, I guess you can call it. They had extra scholarships to give back then. They had more to give. In fact, I believe there's 105 per team. To put it in perspective, there's only 85 now. So there's 20 less football scholarships than when I was a player. And so schools, teams had scholarships left over. So I was a take-a-chance kid. I was one of those guys that they got everybody they wanted. Who else is out there that we like? And somebody brought up my name in the staff room, and I was an all-state player after my senior year. I was a three-sport athlete. And that's where Hayden looked a little deeper into people. You know, the great leaders know how to find those diamonds in the rough, and I was definitely a diamond in the rough. I didn't know. I couldn't read a pass coverage. I mean, I only saw one coverage in high school every game, and when we threw the ball at them, they were so wide open I couldn't miss, right? Because we ran the ball so well. So he just saw something in me, and I still wonder how he did it, but he still saw something in me that he liked, and we won a lot of football games. We won a lot of baseball and basketball games. I think he liked that part of it, and I was that take a chance kid, and it worked out. I had a and he believed in me when a lot of people didn't. I had a school counselor bring me in his office when I was getting recruited by Iowa, and actually offered by Iowa at this point in time. And then when Iowa did that, Northwestern and Northern Illinois jumped in too. You know, it's one of those reactions. Oh, Iowa's going after this kid. He's in state. We better go after him too. But those are the only three schools. The University of Illinois did not even call me or touch me or anything. But they so I had a counselor bring me in. When those three were in the mix, I had a counselor bring me in and said, hey, you'll never make it in the Big Ten. This is literally what he told me. He said, you'll never make it in the Big Ten. It's too big for you. You need to go to Northern Illinois. I think that's the best opportunity for you. I kind of looked at it. I said, okay, appreciate your opinion, but I'm going to go to the University of Iowa. So I'm glad I didn't listen to him.
That's awesome. Was there a quarterback competition? Did you have to win that spot out? How did you eventually become the starting quarterback for the Hawkeyes? And then really the career kind of progressed. I mean, each year the team got better and better, which culminated in the 1985 season, which I've heard so much about.
Right. Well, that's a good question. The timing again was good. When I was a freshman, we had two senior quarterbacks at the time. They were both fifth-year senior guys. Gordy Bohannon, you know, all his kids have played basketball at the collegiate level, and then a guy named Pete Gales. Those are the two fighting it out as seniors, and they both actually played that year, and we went to the Rose Bowl under both of those guys. I was just a greenhorn freshman, you know. And I'll be honest with you, Adam. I remember keep in mind, I didn't know how to read pass coverages, okay? I didn't know anything about defensive football or how to read coverages. So I went to Iowa, and I was overwhelmed. I remember in training camp my first year calling my folks saying, Mom, Dad, I don't know if I can handle this. This is way over my head. And Hayden at the time was he was at the forefront in everything he did offensively. He was ahead of his time. So imagine me being way behind in my times to a guy who was way ahead of his time. Oh, I had a lot of catching up to do. So I was overwhelmed. Well, we had two senior quarterbacks, and I just watched them. I immersed myself in film. I just, you know, my father taught me a valuable lesson. Hey, when in doubt, work hard. Just keep working. You'll get better. You have good coaches there. They'll bring you along. And I just trusted and believed that. And so I immersed myself in film. I needed to catch up. I would stay late even as freshmen. When my buddies were going out and having a good time, I was the nerd study guy, you know, that wanted to stay and watch tape because I needed to catch up. I needed to earn my way and earn the scholarship. And I knew when the spring hit, I had an opportunity because those two guys were graduating, and it's wide open at that point in time. So I knew that was the opportunity to take. So I studied it. Studied it because the quarterback position is such a mental game. It's really 80% mental, about 20% physical. You got to obviously deliver the ball accurately and all that, but it's really knowing the game and preparation. So I studied it that entire fall. Well, they watched me, and I don't think Coach Snyder was real excited about me in watching fall. I was a skinny kid. I came in there 175 pounds, 6'4". I didn't have a lot of arm strength. And he watched me all fall, and I don't think he really liked me as a player. He liked me as a person, don't get me wrong. I don't think he liked me as a player. Well, they went out and recruited the #1 junior college quarterback in the country out of California. And they brought him in at midterm. All right, so they brought him in. They gave him a press conference, everything. He was going to be the quarterback for the next 2 years for the Iowa Hawkeyes, and bringing me along. Hopefully I'll learn by then. And I saw that. I just said, you know what? I am going to get after this. I do have a competitive streak, and I said, I'm going to earn this job. And I don't care who they bring in. But they did. They brought in this guy, and rightfully so. You have a wide-open situation. They're not real fired. My coach's not real fired about what he's seen in the fall. Hey, we better bring in a junior college and bridge that gap a little bit. So they brought this kid in, and it just lit a fire underneath me, and I went out and competed in the spring and won the job.
So what was the moment? The name of your book is Destined for Greatness. And that's a quote from Hayden Fry. And he said, hey, kid, you're destined for greatness. What was that moment that you really laid down? I mean, was it after a game? Was there a play, a practice? Was there a moment that you laid there or sat there and said, you know what? I got this. Like, this is mine now. This is my team. And we are great, and I'm great. Like, what was that moment?
Well, that's a good question. Let me give you 2 moments. Well, here's why he came out with that. That spring, we had in our very first scrimmage, okay, we had practice. Now we're going to have our first live scrimmage. And they went through, we had 5 quarterbacks vying for the job. And they went through these, first 3 or 4 played, and they finally put the youngster in me. They finally put me in. I went 16 for 17 in that scrimmage and lit it up. And that's when Coach Fry said after that scrimmage right there that I was going to be destined for greatness. Now, when he said it, Adam, I said, whoa, slow down here. That was one scrimmage, and I just got hot. I just got hot in the scrimmage. I couldn't miss. And he said that, and I thought, oh, man, that's a lot. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I hope he's right. But that's where it first came out. And then I had a really good spring, all right? I go into the fall as the starting quarterback, and we go out to Lincoln, Nebraska, and it was my worst game of my career. We go out we upset Nebraska in 1981. I was not the quarterback. They had revenge on their mind. So we go out to Lincoln. They had a great football team. We were rebuilding. We were young. I had both sets of grandparents out there from Oklahoma. I had 20 family members in my debut at Lincoln. It was hot. It was 120 on the field, and we were getting beat 42-0 in the middle of the fourth quarter. It was horrible. I threw interceptions. I fumbled the ball. I got hit every which way. I threw the ball into the dirt. It was terrible. I'll never forget my little old Southern grandmother when I was walking out of the stadium that day. Chuck, in her little Southern voice, you don't have to play this game of football anymore if you don't want to. So I said, grandmother, hold on. It's only one game. Give me a break. Well, Hayden benched me for the next game. I did not start the next game. So, and that was against Iowa State. And so we had another junior quarterback that played against Iowa State that year, that second game at home. And really all he had to do is win that game. We win that game under him, and he's probably a 2-year starter, and I'm sitting the bench. Well, we did not win that game.
And that was 81?
That was 82. 82. And so that was my first starting year. And I'm going to answer your second question, but finally, Hayden puts me in at Arizona, down there in the heat, the desert heat, at night, and it was sweltering. And I had a good game, and we won that game. And we were 0-2 going into that game, Adam. So it was a big one of the biggest victories we had was going down there. They had Ricky Hundley, an All-American linebacker, but it was an outstanding game. That was my little bit of a breakthrough. But to fully answer your question, I was starting all that the rest of the year, but I was fighting and scratching every single game, just trying to get through the game and not make mistakes. I was playing not to make mistakes more than playing to win. Just don't make mistakes. And all of a sudden, we just kind of grinded to a 7-4 year. You know, a young team, no expectations. We go into the Peach Bowl that year, and we go in there, and our passing game just lit. We're on fire. That was my first game. We threw for over 300. We just couldn't miss. That was the time where I felt like coming out of that game that I can do this in the Big Ten for the first time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You hear so many great stories about Hayden Fry. I mean, growing up, it was at my house, it was Chuck Long, Hayden Fry. He has such a coaching tree. Barry Alvarez, Coach Snyder, on and on. I mean, the list goes on. Kirk Ferentz, Bob Stoops. What made Hayden Fry such a great leader?
He brought a rare combination of discipline and fun. That was really what it is. Because really coaches are one or the other. They're so disciplined that you don't have much fun, but you can win. Or they're too much fun and you're not winning enough, you know, that kind of thing. He just had that rare discipline and fun combination. After every home win or after every victory, Adam, we're doing the hokey pokey.
Right.
I mean, grown men and staff members doing the hokey pokey. You know.
Yeah.
He celebrated every victory, and not a lot of coaches do that. Yeah. You know, oh, we were supposed to beat them anyway. You know, but he celebrated every victory. He made every practice special. He had this flair about him where you could not wait to get to practice the next day to see what he's going to say or do next. He just had that kind of flair. One of the best personalities I've ever been around. And he had a great memory. He can remember names. You know, he can go into a room of 100 people and remember names coming out of it. Just had that special quality. But the other part of it is he was not afraid to hire assistants that would become head coaches someday. Not every coach does that. He has the #1 coaching tree in the country right now as we speak. More than Nick Saban, more than Urban Meyer, more than Bear Bryant, more than Bobby Bowden, all those guys. Now, a Nick Saban tree or a Urban Meyer tree may pass him up someday, but right now he's #1. And that's why, because we were part of the building blocks of that program. He made it fun and exciting for the fans. You know, he had that flair on TV, but for us, he was just that great disciplinarian. He had a great staff that knew how to teach the game. They were teachers. They weren't yellers or screamers. And he assembled a staff that was second to none. I mean, you're talking about Bill Snyder, Barry Alvarez, Dan McCarney. You're talking about Kirk Ferentz, young Bob Stoops as a GA, guys like Don Patterson, Carl Jackson, who went on to win a Super Bowl ring with the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, these guys were just a special group. The older you get, you realize how special they really were. So the combination of discipline, fun, and just assembling a great staff that knew how to teach the game, that's what made it special.
We talk a lot on this podcast about vulnerability and authenticity being the new currency in leadership. It's kind of one of my favorite quotes. It certainly seems like Hayden was so far ahead of his time and created that lane. I mean, even in business today, or we've talked about parents and coaching kids, and they go so far to, I just want my kids to have fun, and a lack of discipline, or this overemphasis of discipline, but then they forget to have fun. It just seems that is the challenge at business, at parenting, at home, coaching. I mean, how did you take that forward into your professional career, into your coaching career, in trying to strike that balance? Because it's hard, right?
It is hard. He had a wonderful philosophy. Hayden had a wonderful philosophy, and I'll never forget it, and I use it today. Regardless of how the practice went or the game went, win or lose, he wanted his players to leave the field on a positive note. We had this little thing at the end of practice called cheer. All right, so the practice is over. It's hot, sweaty, whatever the case may be. Maybe we had a horrible practice. He brought everybody together, and there was some kind of joke. He brought, anybody can say a joke or a staff member or whatever. He wanted every time to leave on a positive note. And I was coaching. I coached for him. I broke into coaching under him, and he would say that to the coaching staff, guys, men, do not let them leave the field without saying something positive, not only as a group but individually, especially after a loss. After a loss, don't let them leave the locker room without a positive. That was really hard to do because there was times where you were mad at your group or your players, but you had to say something positive before they left, and that resonated. That brought the guys even closer together, and it built a better trust factor with coach and player. And I still use that today in business, and I think all business should use that. And that was just a beautiful thing. The other thing he did, he knew how to think outside the box. I think the great leaders know how to do that. They have a certain creativity. He certainly had great creativity in his play calling. He was a step ahead of everybody else and stayed ahead of everybody else till later on in his career when everybody caught up to him. But he had that, and I'll give you an example of that. The famous bootleg in 1985, we go on a 2-minute drive to get it down to the 2-yard line. We call our last time out with about 28 seconds to go. We need a touchdown. Now, I go to the sideline, and I'm thinking we're going to have to throw the ball because if we run the ball and we get stopped, the clock's going to run out, right? So I'm thinking we're going to have to throw the ball a couple of times. So I go to the sideline, and he says, Charlie, this is what we're going to do. Now, keep in mind, we have never practiced this play one time in 5 years I was there. Not one time. Never even talked about it. And in practice, in spring ball, nothing. Not even in the game plan. And I get to the sideline. He says, Charlie, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run I left 47 pop out, which is a straight fullback lead, dive play between the guard and center, smash mouth football, isolation play, right? Don't tell anybody. Don't hand the ball off. Put it on your right hip, go around the right side, you're going to score a touchdown.
Are you the only one that knew?
I'm the only one.
You're the only one?
Yeah, I'm the only one. I say, I looked at him like he had two heads. I say, are you crazy? Coach, have you seen me run? I mean, you want me to run this play? What if I get tackled? The game could be over.
It's over.
Charlie, I've been coaching 40 years. Do what I tell you to do. It's going to work. You'll score. I go, okay. So I roll in there, and I call the I left 47 pop out. I didn't tell anybody. Break the huddle, get up to the line of scrimmage, take the snap, flip around, fake it, put on my right hip. I went around the right side. There was nobody there. I said, how did he know that? Magic. That's thinking awesome. Outside the box, creativity. That's what he could do. And we never practiced that play one time.
Why'd you carry the ball above your head?
I want to make sure the referee saw it. He was mad at me, though. He was mad at me. He said, Charlie, tuck that ball. I said, Coach, I wanted to make sure the referee saw it,
No, that's great.
They didn't want to blow it dead.
It's interesting hearing stories about great coaches and great leaders, and they do have an ability to usually not take themselves too serious, empower the other coaches around them. It seems unique. I mean, even in business, now you go around and you're with the Iowa Sports Foundation and the work you go talking to businesses and business leaders. And it takes a certain person to let the ego aside and, to your point, think outside the box so that they can really self-assess and see opportunity and not allow their own ego to get in the way. As you go talk to businesses and your message to them, what is that? What is your key message? I mean, you talked about earlier the 6 Ps. I mean, what do you feel like is a key takeaway in your messaging with folks in the business community today?
Well, and today, I think those principles I learned from Hayden still apply today. You saw him take an organization that was a bottom feeder, a horrible program. No one wanted the job, and he brought this magical staff with him and hired some new staff, and all of a sudden the chemistry is right. I think it's important that you get the chemistry right. The best teams that I've been on are the ones with the best chemistry, not so much the best talent. I've been on some teams and coached some teams that were highly talented but didn't necessarily have the chemistry that we needed to go all the way with. And those were the lessons I learned, is how do you get your team, how do you get your people all on the same page, but also to check all those egos at the door. In the coaching world, in the football world, there's a lot of egos, and you have to manage that. Hayden knew how to do that. He knew how to manage it and get everybody to check their egos at the door. Why? He was so confident in himself. The people with big egos, I don't think, have great self-confidence. You got to have great self-confidence, and you know the difference. And he was, like I said, getting back to his staff, he was not afraid to hire future head coaches with as good as he was, or if not better. And that's the key. A lot of CEOs, executive directors, I don't want anybody, as good as me right now, because I don't want anybody taking my job.
Right.
He wasn't afraid of that. He was like, okay, I want to hire as good as or better than me, and we're going to have a good team around. And that was the key takeaway.
It seems like great leaders have an ability to create a space or create a culture. Mm-hmm. If he comes in and allows the egos in, him doing it himself even, it does make it challenging. But you get around a guy like Hayden, who just seems very authentic. He allows you to see his vulnerabilities.
Right.
Others then feel safe to then do the same. Now, their instinct may be to project or, what people with an ego would do, right? They just sort of project that power. But you have a guy that everybody respects as somebody who is just authentic and real. And it's such a challenge even in the business world, because it's almost counter what you think it would be. Like, you're the head coach, you're the head guy, you're the CEO, you're the top dog, but it is inverted the way that you got to go about it. You got to be the most vulnerable. You got to be the most authentic. You got to be able to empower other people. And that's what's really neat, listening to stories about Hayden Fry. And, as you transition, so I think it's really cool. It's worth mentioning. I mean, you got to go to, was it in New York, the Heisman, an incredible opportunity there as runner-up behind Bo Jackson for the Heisman, played in the NFL. As you look back on your professional career, you worked so hard for so long for a dream, and you are this kid thinking, why do they want me to be the quarterback? To wait a second, I can do this, and I can do it at the highest level. You have the number one team in the country. You're up for the Heisman Trophy. You guys were number one all year. People forget about that. You finished in the top 5. You go to a Rose Bowl. You're a first-round draft pick. As you come to the end of that NFL career, how did you really redefine for you what gave you sort of that sense of self-worth? How did you redefine success, leaving what had been your path for so long? How did you make that transition?
That's good. After my collegiate career, my NFL career didn't go as planned. I mentioned I did play for 8 years, which was good. When you look back, you're like, oh wow, you play 8 years, you got it without getting beat up. So that was the best part about it. But I wanted to redefine myself as a coach, mentoring players. When you're a player, you're getting yourself ready to play. That's what you do for your team. You work hard a lot, oftentimes alone, getting ready for your football team, whether it be studying or working out, etc. When you're coaching, it's a different dynamic. And now you're in charge of getting players ready. And you know what? I coached for 20 years, and I had the greatest thrill, even more so than as a player, of getting kids ready to play, watching them come in as boys and leaving as men. And that's what happens at the collegiate level in the football world. You get part of the recruiting of them and get to know their families, and then bringing them in, and they don't know anything yet. And then you see them coming along, and then the light turns on, and there's nothing more special than that when the light turns on. I happen to coach one of the great lessons. I coached the Heisman Trophy winner in Jason White at Oklahoma in 2003. Here's a kid from small town Oklahoma, came in athletic, very athletic, can run and throw, blew out his sophomore year, he blew out his one of his knees, had total ACL reconstruction out the entire year. Came back the next year, blew out the other knee both in game 3. So he had total reconstructed knees on each knee, and he was out that year. And then he was rehabbing all of 2 years, mostly up to 3 years. He was in a training room rehabbing his knees. Oklahoma is a rabid football state. You know, you go down south, Adam, the football pressure goes up, right? And everybody and their uncle, every media outlet, everybody in town, Chuck, Jason White is done. He can't play anymore. He's got 2 bad knees. He can't even move. I said, you know, I listen to all that, and we get in multiple staff meetings and talk about the future, and I just believed this kid had a certain tenacity about him and work ethic. Tough kid from a small town. Reminded me a lot of Iowa kids. I said, we got to give this kid a chance. So we modified the system. We put him in shotgun primarily. Didn't have him move around because I knew he had ability yet. And we fought through. He's going into his senior year now, and we fought through a lot of tough times with him, and I made sure I had to get number 2 ready. I even had our strength coach come to me and say, Chuck, you got to get somebody else ready to play. Here's a kid that did not go through spring ball. We kept him out of spring ball his senior year. Could not get through the summer. Weight coach comes to me and says, Chuck, you better get somebody else ready to play. He could barely get through right now. We go into the fall, and we have a modified program for him. We kept him out. He would practice, and then we kept him out a day just so he can ice his knees down and keep the swelling down, right? We get to the season, and we have to keep him out every Monday after a game because his knees would swell up a little bit, so we kept him out. Jason wins the Heisman Trophy that year. Not only did he play, he won the Heisman Trophy, threw for 40 touchdowns. It was, if you Google that story, and there's a lot of great Heisman stories, don't get me wrong, but that's probably the best as far as perseverance, toughness, and getting through 2 blown-out knees. A lot of people know that story. It should be out there, but if you want a story on guts and determination, that was it. And I was so proud of that moment because it had nothing. I mean, I encouraged him. I would not let him quit. Because there was a time he came to my office in the spring, and he did say, hey, Coach, should I hang this thing up? And I said, Jason, it's only April. You don't need to decide that right now. Let's just work through the summer because I knew he could get through it. And lo and behold, he wins the Heisman Trophy. So it was one of my moments where I felt where leadership worked.
Right.
Where my leadership worked. And it resonated with him, and it got him through it. And I just loved mentoring the kids, and I found out over time that I liked that part of it more than I like playing.
So now you're in a great situation. You're the CEO of Iowa Sports Foundation. Tell us exactly what that is. I think some people will be familiar with some of the aspects of it, but give us kind of an outline of what the Iowa Sports Foundation is, what's its purpose, and now how are you taking all these other tools that you've learned with leadership and continuing to empower young athletes? Our
mission is basically get all Iowans healthier. That's what we're trying to do, make Iowa a healthier state. With the inactivity, with schools pulling back from gym classes and PE classes and getting rid of those, it's vitally important that we get our kids healthier, starting with our kids. Obesity is a big problem nationally, especially with youngsters, and we're just trying to get everybody healthier. We have 5 pillars. We're one of a kind nationally in what we do compared to all the other states and everything in the breadth and scope of what we do. We have 5 pillars of health and wellness. The big one is the Iowa Games. We just finished our 33rd year of summer games. We're going to our 27th year of winter games. We have close to 20,000 total athletes combined in the summer and winter games, and these are 60 Olympic style sports. We have 3,000 volunteers. We have close to 100 commissioners that run all these sports over all of our programs, and we have ages 5 to 95 doing it. These are all ages, anybody, all sports. We're just trying to get people active. It's been a wonderful thing, our Iowa games. We have senior games, which is just the over 50 crowd. Okay, I participate in that. I'm a pickleball player.
Nice.
Love doing that, and I love in all of our running events. We also have brand new corporate games. Corporate games, we had about 80 Des Moines companies embedding our programs in their health and wellness programs, and also getting their employees active. And they fight it out for a trophy on 3 different levels: large, medium, and small companies. We have 35 companies from the Iowa City Coralville corridor, and we just started that this past year. So we're getting more companies involved, healthier. And then we have Live Healthy Iowa, which are web-based challenges to track your health and wellness online. We help you do that. We have a 10-week wellness challenge coming up, sponsored by the IFFP, the Iowa Food and Family Project. Our Iowa games are sponsored by Grinnell Mutual. That's our presenting sponsor, along with a lot of wonderful sponsors. So the 10-week wellness challenge is a 10-week wellness challenge, web-based challenge, where we track your health and wellness, and we've had over 1 million pounds lost.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's since 2003 and 2003 when it started, but we've had over 1 million pounds lost. There's some great stories of people losing 100 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds in that health and wellness challenge alone. We've had over close to 9,000 people in that challenge alone across the state of Iowa.
Oh, wow.
We are very proud to say that we have all 99 counties of participants, or participants from all 99 counties.
Oh, cool.
I don't think any states can really say that nationally. So we're really proud of that. And then last but not least, we have our Adaptive Sports Iowa, which is sports and recreation for people with physical disabilities. We have spinal cord injuries. We have hand cyclists we have a RAGBRAI team where they hand cycle across the state. And we also have vision impaired. So we have sports for the blind. So it's really, that's near and dear to my heart. I have a brother that was born with cerebral palsy. So I know what it's like to grow up in a family with a sibling with special needs. And so that one is really starting to grow. We're getting a lot of great fundraising behind that. I mentioned our Adaptive Sports Iowa riding team, cycling team that does RAGBRAI. There's about 80 riders with volunteers that do it every year. So that's what we do. We have sports, recreation, health, and wellness programs for anybody in the state.
So I got to get healthy. Let's come up with something that would be fun, way that I would be willing to put up some of my money. I could see if I could get some matching dollars. I really do like the adaptive sports programs that you guys are doing. If there was something there that we could help out with.
You bet.
What's some fun we could do?
Well, I mentioned the 10-week wellness challenge starts in January.
Yeah.
And that's a team from 2 to 10.
Yep.
Okay. And you just get your team from your company here, and 2 to 10, you sign up online. It's easy to sign up. It's $20 a pop.
Yeah,
it's really an inexpensive but effective way to get something started, and you will literally get healthier. You'll lose weight. We have great recipes online. We track your health and wellness for you. You have to do the work. You have to do the exercising and eating right.
You guys don't come cook for us?
But the beauty of it, we like the team aspect, because then there's accountability. So it is a team-based deal, not an individual. So you want to get a team from 2 to 10.
Got it.
And, companies really thrive on this. They have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
We'll give you a T-shirt, all that good stuff.
I like free T-shirts.
Yeah. We'll give you that. But you have to build your team in your company and sign up and let her rip.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Chuck, this means a ton. You coming in, taking the time. We certainly know you're busy with everything you got going on. So coming in and sharing your stories and seeing, your transformation as a leader, and then empowering other athletes. And sport's an incredible thing, and it's an awesome opportunity to let young people and people of all ages to learn life principles. So it's really awesome to get to meet you and see what you're up to now. And it just means a lot. I really appreciate you coming on the What's Up Grubb podcast.
I like the What's Up Grubb podcast. Thank you, Adam. It's been a pleasure, and we're looking forward to the future with our foundation and still the mentoring of youngsters and try to get them involved with sports.
Cool. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Adam.